Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second big show. This is
Oh,
Mark and Rob's Sports Showdown,
and I'm Rob, the good one.
and I'm Mark. I'm the evil one. So, anyways, last night was the biggest moment in women's college basketball. Really, even bigger than
Yeah.
last year's finals because uh, they had two huge games and two big matchups. And I'm going to say that this was the most impressive performance by a woman in a team sport in my 60 years of watching sports. That's how impressed I was with Caitlin
And
Clark.
I'm going to agree with you. Um, she started out a little slow, and I was a little worried, but then she just turned it on and just took over. And that's what you do in basketball. I was very impressed. I was like, wow, she at the end, she really is something.
I will say that, she displayed a level of making your teammates better higher than I've ever seen in women's basketball, which is why she's the greatest college player of all time at this point, in my opinion. I'll be honest. I'm a huge Cheryl Miller fan. I was watched her in the Olympics in '84, and I thought she was like one and a half times, without exaggerating, like one and a half times better than anyone else in the court. And she unfortunately blew out her ACL when she was 26, and there was no
Yeah,
WNBA. But a lot of people consider her the greatest player ever, and that's 50 years ago. But I
right.
think the last 2 years she played at a higher level than even Cheryl Miller, even though Cheryl Miller was decades ahead of her time. And I'm a huge fan. If you think Cheryl Miller is the greatest, I have no problem with what you're saying. I just think
No.
Caitlin Clark the last 2 years has surpassed that.
Yeah, I think Cheryl Miller was the greatest. She all around shooting, defense, we all around she was better.
I watched Cheryl Miller live
Hmm.
in '84, and I watched every women's game because of her on the Olympics. I watched every one, just like I watched everyone for the men's because Michael Jordan was there.
Right.
And then I went back recently and watched her championship game when she was at USC. She was a freshman and a sophomore, and they
Hmm.
won both of them. She actually was against Kim Mulkey in her first championship game, who's the
Right.
coach for LSU from last night's game. By the way, that was one of the reasons I tuned in to watch the game, was to see what outfit Kim Mulkey was going to wear. Because the game before, she had one of these look at me outfits that looked like a
Yeah.
circus performer on acid. And
Yeah. I was
but
kind of
last
going
night
back
she
to.
was
I was
more
going. I was.
reasonable. After the game, Kim Mulkey was very complimentary towards Clark. And
Yeah, she was.
she said several things about, I'm glad you're leaving. And then she finally
Mhm.
said, never seen anything like it. Now, if that
Yeah.
doesn't say you're the best player of all time, I don't know. And like I said, I
Right.
pointed out to before, she played against Cheryl Miller.
She played. She coached, and then she coached, and then she coached. So she's been coaching for over 20 years, and she's seen all the good players. And yeah, I mean, she complimented her, which is the way you should. That's the way you do it. So yeah, she's exactly right. Like I said, I've never seen with Caitlin Clark. I agree with. I've never, you're like I said, you're something else.
The other reason I thought was an interesting game is because this is a revenge game, even though it wasn't in the finals. They lost that, it was a heartbreaking loss. And then we'll get to the stalking later with Angel. We'll get to injury later, but it was Caitlin Clark said, I don't look at this as a revenge game. They're just a team in our way to get our ultimate goal, which is what she has to say, and it's the right attitude.
Yeah.
But it was partly a revenge game. There's no way if you're a competitor that you
Hmm.
can forget that you lost to that team in the most important game of your life
Of
up to
course
that
not.
point. There's no way you take that out of the brain, because she's hardwired like Michael Jordan, and we all know how Jordan would use that as fuel to motivate
But
himself.
but you like also what you said afterwards. It's like we're not done. We're
No,
not done with this. We're not
she's
done.
possessed, and
We're not done. She didn't
that's
just.
why I'm
I mean,
infatuated with Clark.
it might have been a revenge game, but she said we're not done. So
So last night, statistically, she had 41 points, and she had 9 threes, but there was 9 for 20, which is just about 50%, which is great for threes, especially since half of them were about from half court.
that
And
one
she
that
had
one that one court the one she hit from the hash mark. That got me up out of my seat.
right, she had 12 assists. Some were spectacular, and 7 assists. I'm sorry, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. And she was just electrifying for the second game in a row. And if you didn't see the game before, she didn't do it with the 3 points like she did last night. The game before against Colorado, she had 15 assists, and just unbelievable passes, like jump out of your seat passes, that
Well,
pinpoint passing that this much,
I think she also went to the basket more. Did you see that behind the back little Pete Maravich move she did? She went to
She
the
went to the
basket
basket, and that
more.
was a turning point in the game when,
Yes.
somewhat, when Angel Reese hurt her ankle, which I guess she sprained
Yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
games ago,
Yeah.
and she missed like 10 of 12 shots in the second half at point blank range.
Yeah. I was
I'm
like,
going to assume her ankle was hurting her.
yeah, like we were saying, just pushing off on that. It's hard. I've played with a sprained ankle, and it's though you try to gut it out. After a while, the adrenaline kind of is gone, and you're limping, and you feel it. So yeah, I saw the shots that she would have made was definitely affected by her ankle injury.
Yeah, I'm going to give her the benefit of doubt and say that Iowa got a little lucky because for that injury, it made a difference in the second half. I still think Caitlin Clark would have found a way to win, but it would have been harder because Angel Reese was pretty dominant in the first quarter. Caitlin Clark played a great game. Someone said, "Well, she played a perfect," and she didn't play a perfect game. She made like a really dumb pass in the middle that was like right to Caitlin,
Like I said,
right to Angel Reese. Like it was like,
no,
what was that? There was like no chance of that being completed.
In the beginning, I was like, "What are you doing?" In the beginning, she made like 2 or 3 passes where she passed it like right to the person, and
I only saw 2. I didn't see 3. I saw 2 passes that I thought she would like back.
There was 2, 3, and I would have, as a coach, I would have called. I would have yelled out, which I've done before. I would have said, Pat, we're in white. Pass it to the people who are in white, okay?
You have to pass it. You have to pass it to your teammates. Is that a rule? As a
No,
coach?
the team color is white, so it would have been blue. Our colors I had were blue, so I was to pass the guy in blue. So
okay. Well, she did take 2 shots, 2 threes that I thought she forced. But one was a heat check in the second half. But other than that, I thought she was phenomenal. She did almost nothing wrong.
I mean, there's no way. I mean, we could sit there and pick flaws, and like I said, there's some shots she should have taken. That's normal, but that young lady, she's good.
I will say one other thing about her, because in the first game, in fact, all year long, she started whining last year of not getting calls because she started being the best player in the country, and maybe she thought she deserved them, and maybe she just wasn't getting them. But half the players in the NBA do that, but she's been getting criticized for that. Excuse me. And this year she was still whining until the first game of the tournament was against Holy Cross, I think it was. She was whining, and her father told her to shut up from the stands. Everyone saw this. It was like
I was like, yes, thank you, Dad. Get in there.
And she calmed down after that. But the whole first quarter, she was like a little baby, which, like I said,
because they were taking her out of her game. Holy Cross was playing good defense and taking her out of her game, and that's
but to be fair, she did deserve some calls that she didn't get.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to keep playing. I mean,
I agree. Okay, so the next game, it was even worse. There was more foul calls that weren't called against was it
West Virginia?
West Virginia, and she was better behaved than she was the game before, even though she was getting fewer calls.
Yeah, she was getting mugged. That game, I have to admit, she was getting mugged, and I was going like, wow. Okay.
The first half she was mugged and didn't get any calls. The second half she was mugged and got the calls.
Right.
So people who thought, I don't know what game they were seeing, who thought that she got favoritism in that game.
Did
not watch the same game I watched because
I guess
West Virginia got favored heavily in the first half because they were doing a lot of fouling. They were pressing and a very aggressive defense, a lot of hand touching. That's, guess what? It's a non-contact sport, no matter what you want to say.
Yeah, I guess you haven't played basketball. Okay. Non-contact. Yes, so that's what they say.
So anyways, since that time, she has done less showboating, only to her teammates in the crowd when she's at home, less showboating. She's done less trash talking than she did last year. And she must have great parents because I think her parents sat her down after that Holy Cross game and said, "Oh yeah, you've got to quit complaining about the ref. Just concentrate on the game.
Exactly.
Do less showboating and just be an assassin, which is what she is. She's an assassin, which is
just go play your game. Quit your whine and go play your game. That's exactly what I would have said. I'm sure that's what her father said to her. Like, quit your whine and go out there and play the game.
And that change in her behavior, plus her performance in the last 2 games, should do what she shouldn't have to have done, but really tone down the haters, if not completely shut them up.
And
Because her behavior's better and her play's been better the last 2
and
games.
I don't understand the haters. I mean, like we said with Cheryl Swoops and those other ones, I'm like, why are you hating on this player who's bringing up? She's bringing up the women's game. No one,
Right.
everybody's tuning in to watch. They're not tuning in to watch this. They're tuning in to see Caitlin Clark. If that doesn't help the women's game, why would you want to say? Why would you want to hate on her?
I don't know. Cheryl Swoops isn't in the WNBA. We'll get to that in another video because we want to concentrate on last night's game. By the way, so after last night's game, Angel Reese was on there basically playing the victim. She said several things, like she wasn't happy this year. She was sexualized. She had like death threats, which let's stop that right now. The death threats are ridiculous. I don't think they're serious death threats, but they're ridiculous. Who's ever doing that, grow up. The sexualized, that's on her. She posted in Sports Illustrated in small bikinis, and then she on Instagram she puts them all over the place, and she got 1.7.
Yeah.
She gets a lot of views. That's her.
She also said she missed 4 games because it was a mental thing. Also, she missed 4 games, and that was because I'm not in college anymore. I mean, I don't know what kind of pressure, but these young kids seem to, with that social media, really, they should just turn it off. With that kind of stuff. Just turn it off.
No, that's a good point, Rob. I'm going to agree with you on that. There's too much. She's on social media too much for the last year, and she didn't work on her game because she's no better than she was last year. She was second team All-American last year, first team All-American this year, and her numbers were actually down slightly.
Yeah, she could. We grew up in an era where there was bullying, but that was physical. You actually be in front of the person bullying. But this one, like I said, the death threats and just the pressure, like especially after last year when she did her little antics, and that's where it really came to peak.
Yeah, I think it was more than antics. I'm gonna tell you my opinion on this one because I watched the game where Caitlin Clark did the "Now You See Me" thing, and it was coming. She was trash talking back and forth with their friends, Haley, who at the time. She was with Louisville, and now she did the transfer portal to LSU. So she played him last year too in a different team. And she's coming out. Haley said she didn't even see it. I mean, it's in other words, it wasn't in her face. It was for 2 seconds, and then that was like 2 games before. She didn't do it to anyone in LSU. She didn't do it in the semifinals to South Carolina. She did it one time for 2 seconds, coming out of a huddle, and it wasn't in someone's face. Okay, and there was no ring thing. There was, they were just trash talking back and forth, and it was during the game when the game was in doubt still.
Right.
Okay. Like the doing it during the game is much fairer, and it's almost like against the rules to do the trash talking after the game. At that point, you should be shaking someone's hand. During the game, it's all in fun. Jordan and Larry Bird, who, 2 of the most popular players ever, were famous for trash talking.
Larry Bird was the #1 trash talker, believe it or not.
I know. I was just saying, but Jordan did it too. And so just to be fair, they did it a lot, but they did it before the game and during the game. After the game, they didn't go stalk someone after the game. So anyway, 50 seconds or so are left on the game, and the game's out of reach. So it's no longer a fair trash talking situation. But fine, it's fine. If Angel Reese does the "Now You See Me" thing, and she's standing in the foul line next to Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's like looking straight ahead, just ignoring her.
Yeah. And
then she does the ring thing. That's for like 5 seconds long.
Okay. Right, I saw it. Yeah, we all saw that. That's the
took a high road. She ignored her. Boom. If she had just done that and stopped, I would have been okay with it. Caitlin Clark is a showboat sometimes. She did the "Now You See Me" thing. She waved off a 3-point shooter against South Carolina because she said, "You can't make the shot." I get that. But she didn't stop. 40 seconds later of the game time, actually, it was like 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
Her whole team's going over to walk off the thing and celebrate. And she does a "Now You See Me" and the ring thing and follows Caitlin Clark. I timed it for 10 seconds as Caitlin Clark is walking away to her team. So instead of like a normal human being and just go celebrating the moment with thing, she did it a second time for 10 seconds. That's where it went too far for me.
Well, I'm gonna let you know. Like I said, the women's are a little more aggressive and they're a little more definitely catty. Like I said, I've been around them. I've coached women's and girls basketball, and I think I told you the story where we played one team and we beat them. And my girls were in the shaking hand line, and all of a sudden they were looking at their hand, and the other team had spit on their hand and then shook hands with my girls' teams. My girls were
that's gross.
My girls were like, they just spit on their hands. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? I wonder
why they did that. That's weird.
So then we ended up playing them again in the finals, and we beat them again. But I refused. I said, I refused to shake hands with them. I said, well, they're like, why? I said, well, last time they did it, they spit on their hands. So I'm not gonna shake hands.
I don't blame you for that, but it's a different situation. But yeah, I don't blame you.
No, it's not different. But I'm just telling. It's not a different situation. It's what I'm saying with the I don't know, women are. I mean, I'll probably get a lot. I hope I get comments about this. They're a little more catty. They're I call it timeout. You would know.
I mean, you coach girls basketball.
Yeah, I've called a timeout, and the girls like, I'm gonna get her. She does this. I'm like, oh my gosh. When I played, I never said that. I called timeout. If the guy did, I'm like, I'm gonna get her. I'm like, oh my goodness.
So anyway, she does that. And one other point about that is when she did that, I've watched sports for 60 years, and that's the first time I've ever seen one player on one team stalk the other player in the other team when the game was basically over with, when the person went at their lowest moment in their life and stalk them for 10 seconds at the end of a game. I've never seen that in any team sport in my entire life.
Yeah, and luckily Caitlin was just like you said. She wasn't aggressive. If it was me, like I said, now would switch for men's sport. If that was a guy and they did that to me, he definitely would be on the ground. Definitely.
Well, you're 6'2". I don't know if the ground would be
because the emotions, like you said, after a game, you see them when they interview the players. They stick the mic in their face. After a loss. Well, how do you feel about this loss? How the hell do you think I feel? Sucks. Why are you thinking? What am I supposed to say? Well, I'm so glad I lost. Boy, we made a great effort. Oh, we freaking lost. Get out of my face.
It's okay to be depressed after a loss. If you're not a competitor. But
so
I just pointed out numerous significant differences between what Caitlin Clark did, and she didn't even do it to Angel Reese or LSU, than what Angel Reese did to Clark, who did two gestures 2 times for 15 seconds.
Yeah, that was classic.
Way difference. And what did the media say? The overly woke white media and some black individuals on media and in comments on YouTube, they said it was racist to criticize Angel Reese because she did I'm going to quote them. They kept saying that, and they said this on ESPN, the exact same thing.
I saw.
Poppycock.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the same.
Not a dick. It wasn't even close to the same thing.
What? And actually, like I said, unfortunately, I did hear something about while you're talking about the viewership, it was the matchup between LSU and Iowa, but also, unfortunately, the matchup was also, I believe, almost a racial thing. What
matchup?
I mean, the matchup Iowa and LSU was a racial thing. That's why people tuned in. That's what some people did tune in for that.
This year?
Yeah.
Or last year, or both?
This year.
Okay. What was racial between the two of them? I'm not sure it was racial.
No, this past game, they tuned in because I want to see what's going to happen. It was a grudge match, but they wanted to see it. Unfortunately, people were like, oh, it's going to be black against white.
Well, Iowa's Iowa is a very white team. They have 4 white starters and a biracial white starter. Gabby Marshall's biracial, I found out, and their women off the bench are all the first 3 women off the bench are white.
And LSU has a one little white spot there who was guarding Caitlin. She had the little,
and she's transferred. That's Haley Van Lith. She transferred in this year. She wasn't even on the team last year.
But I mean, I'm just saying that's a lot of people tuned into it for that reason, which is like, okay.
But anyway, so Reese got lambasted by most people on social media, not the people I just talked about. They took the other view, which I think she deserved for that behavior. Mm-hmm. And then she said she was depressed. I go, that's because you did something wrong and you haven't owned up to it. Here's the thing. She could have just said after she did it, once she did it, she was going to get lambasted anyways. But she could have just said, maybe I went a little far. Yeah. I apologize to Caitlin. We have a good relationship afterwards.
She's a great player. She's a really great player. I think that
She
kind
could
of
have said that. She could have like taken away some of the criticism and pressure off her.
right.
Instead, she goes, "Oh, people criticize me all year." This is what she said last year. I'm too hood, blah, blah, blah. It was like everyone else's fault but her, that she went too far with her behavior last year. It's her fault.
Yeah,
Okay, so I have no sympathy for her in that sense. The death
no,
threats, again, the death threats are ridiculous.
right.
I have no sympathy for her in terms of the criticism she got, other than the death threats. And
But on one text, Mark, you really have to. Yeah, she should have, but then you have to realize she's still a young woman, and she'll
I
probably
get
maybe
that.
who
I get that
knows,
she made a
who
mistake, but
knows,
then
who
someone could have
knows.
pulled her aside and said, "Listen,
Well,
own up to it and apologize."
no, well, like I said, no, they don't do that. No one would do that. That's the problem with the youth,
She
and
would have eased the
that's
criticism if she did.
yeah, that's part of the youth thing. No one pulls them aside and says, "Look, what you're doing is bad." Not like
That's not
we,
true. I just
not,
gave you an
not,
example that
yeah,
her parents, that
yeah,
Caitlin Clark's
exactly.
parents
Caitlin.
must have pulled her apart after Holy Cross game, pulled her
Yeah,
aside after the Holy Cross game.
if my mom saw some of my basketball games, she probably would have said, "Hey, what are you doing?" So, I mean, no one was going to pull her aside to do that, and that's what's wrong with the youth. No one talks to them. Someone's got to talk to them and say, "Hey, what you did is not
Maybe
right."
she doesn't have this. She doesn't have the parental backing or something. I don't
Well,
know.
no, it's not
I have no idea how close she is.
Well, like you said, it doesn't have to be the parent. There's the coach right there. If I was a coach, I'd be
Well, it's
yeah,
Mulkey.
yeah. But I mean, yeah.
If Mulkey was better at that type of thing, I don't have confidence that she is.
An adult assistant coach, whatever. She was like, "Hey, man, hey, girl, what you did."
There's no indication to me that Mulkey would tell her that was wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe
well,
she
obviously did. Well, obviously she didn't because she didn't make any comment about it. Obviously,
well,
I think later on. I think later on, Angel, she will look back. I give her about 5 years, and then when she's in the NBA, and then when they bring up that something like that, because she'll go on and talk about her like she did after the game about her mental and going on. She'll look back and the question I would ask her: do you feel what you did was wrong? Now, maybe before your 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Now,
look at the difference on the two. Caitlin Clark's behavior is better this year, and Angel Reese's behavior in game isn't any better this year. So, what happened? Someone handled it.
What do you mean by better?
I just gave you earlier in our discussion. I gave you several examples that Caitlin Clark's behavior. She doesn't whine as much. She doesn't showboat as much.
No, I'm talking about Reese. You say that Reese is. I know.
After the game, she gets in and blames everybody like she's a victim. So her behavior and her mind thought isn't any better than it was last year. She blamed everybody else for why she was depressed for last year. She was depressed for last year because of the criticism she received for this antics that she took place. You called it antics. I call it stalking. And this is what she got criticized for that.
Stalking is a little more. Stalking is more like if you keep on going after the person.
She taunted her and stalked her.
Yeah, stalking.
The first time she taunted her, the second time she stalked her.
I don't know if I'd call it stalking because
that's okay. You don't have to. I'm calling it stalking. I'm taking it.
You're giving it whatever.
But anyway, the claim that it's the claim by some people that it was the exact same thing and said it was racist are wrong. But just to be clear, racism is always wrong. But claiming racism with false equivalency like this one is also wrong, and it slows down the progress in eliminating racism. And that's my objection to when they claim racism when racism doesn't exist in this situation.
Luckily,
I predicted Iowa, and Rob predicted.
Yeah.
LSU.
I don't remember that. I don't remember predicting that.
Rob's getting old and his memory's going bad. But we both got Connecticut right. So, and that we didn't even talk about that, but it wasn't an exciting matchup as I thought it was. But I think Paige Buecher's outplayed Juju Watkins. I think she's a slightly better player, mainly because of experience, and she doesn't turn the ball over nearly as much, and is a more efficient shooter.
Yeah.
But I thought that game wasn't nearly as exciting, but it was an interesting matchup. And I think they're the second and third best guards in women's college basketball, and maybe the second and third best player.
Yeah, Juju's going to be really good. She's only a freshman. She's going to be very good.
Yeah, just so it's clear, I think that Paige Buecher's Caitlin Clark is only a little bit better than Paige Buecher. I don't think it's like there's this big gap. I think
there's no big gap. No, but Caitlin, I'm on the Caitlin Clark bandwagon. I don't even call it a bandwagon. You don't have to be the bandwagon.
I'm unabashed on the bandwagon.
Yeah, it's not even a bandwagon. It's like she's the best player.
And I think that Juju Watkins is phenomenal freshman, and she is 6'2" and faster and taller and more athletic than either of them, and she has a great future. And anyways, I hope Caitlin Clark's performance the last 2 games really toned down, if not shut up the haters, like I said. And I think that then there's like Connecticut players who are, Connecticut fans who are big fans of Diana Taurasi and Brianna Stewart. Great players in the NBA, in the WNBA, in fact. But if you let me give you an example, because this whole thing with the championship thing is, if you stuck Diana Taurasi and either of the teams the last 2 years that Iowa had, there is no way they would make the national finals last year with her on the team. No. And there's no way they would have made it to semifinals this year. And they might actually win it. Yeah, same thing with Brianna Stewart. That's why Caitlin Clark is better than those two, because she could have gone to Connecticut in their era, or even now, or even to South Carolina now, or even LSU right now. She could have won 4 championships. So she would have been more accomplished as a player, team-wise. That would make her any better player. Said she has Michael Jordan's brain, and she's risen above everybody else's level of play, making the players around her way better.
Yeah, that's what you do. Yeah,
that's what you do. The clutch play. She's clutch.
Oh yeah, that's what you do. Yeah,
she had 2 buzzer beaters already in her career, once last year and once this year.
I told you when she hit that 3-pointer from the hash mark, I rose up on my seat. I said, "Whoa."
All right, one shout out I want to give is to I watched her play 2 games. I didn't really watch LSU play this year. I watched in finals. Flau'jae Johnson, we mentioned earlier, she had a really good game 2 games ago, and she had a good game against Iowa, even though they lost. And she's going to be a star. Yeah, she is athletic. She's quick. She's aggressive, and she's dedicated. And she just rap. She goes to rap. She's also a rap star, I understand. And I think she's going to be a big star. And I'll just say that because she played. Haley Van Lith is a good player. I'm not sure she made the right move transferring over to LSU. She didn't fit in quite right as the point guard. But, maybe she was – I don't know if she was chasing a championship or not, but I'm not sure that was the right move for her. But that's my personal opinion. Right. Any comment on those players?
No, you're right. I just said that. Yeah, she's good overall. It's a good ball, excellent ball player. Good defense. Okay. Very quick. Good defense. Scorer. Yeah, she's going to be good.
One other thing, I thought Clark's teammates played well, and I think they're better defenders that they're given credit for, and were responsible for the win too. I don't want to say this was all Caitlin Clark.
Well, I got to give a shout out to the coach too. I mean, the coach, like I said,
excellent coach, doesn't get enough credit.
And she was great in the beginning. Like that's why they had to call the timeout. She was killing with that back door. I'm like, I was like, yes. That's why I loved coaching women's basketball, because it's more of a floor game. I don't have to worry about some guy trying to come in and try to dunk it. So you got to be a little more strategic about how you run your plays. And she ran the plays with the back cuts, and that was killing LSU. And I was like, wow, nice job. Good job.
You can tell Kate Martin was a senior and a veteran, because she showed it in that game. She played great. But I just wanted to point that out. Anyways, the ratings came in, and I underestimated. And like I said, if this was on NBC, if this was on ABC, ESPN, like it is on Monday Night Football, they showed on both, I would have predicted 12 to 15 million, and I said that. But I said they're going to get at least 10 million, and I was wrong. They're 12.3 million. And at peak, they were 16 million, by far the highest rated women's game of all time. And they beat the finals last year. It didn't really surprise people. Everybody thought it was going to be.
Well, that's what I'm saying. She's bringing up the game. She's bringing up the women's sport of basketball. And how can you hate that?
That's what we're going to finish that. And please like and subscribe.